If you are male and you convert to Judaism, yes, uh, you must be circumcised. And interesting halacha, I was not aware of until recently. Um, if you're a hemophiliac and so you cannot be circumcised, you actually are not allowed to convert to Judaism, which is an interesting thing. But yeah, so as far as I know, that is the only absolute restriction that you can have from birth, which prevents you. So if you are an uncircumcised male and you're a hemophiliac, I wonder though, I mean, well, if you cannot be circumcised, then you cannot convert. Wow, interesting. And if you don't circumcise, is it a sin? If you have a male child who should be circumcised and you do not, that would be considered sinful. And then once he is old enough, um, and if he does not get himself circumcised, then he would be uh, he would not be doing something he should be doing. So yeah. This is not meant as an insult, but you look like Savonarola right now. Oh, I'm not exactly sure who that is, but I just shaved my head and it's cold here, which is why I am wearing my hood. It's because of the cold. Um, Makes sense. How big is your synagogue? I don't have a synagogue. Well, the synagogue I don't go to as much as I should is um, Chabad at USC, and there, I mean, most of the people who come there don't really come there for services. They come there for the social events more than anything. That's funny. I am good. How are you, Antonio? Perfect timing. Well, there's a bunch of you watching. And apparently there's somebody watching on Twitter. I'm trying this Twitter thing. That's not what I was trying to do. He was a Dominican friar who took over Florence and threw out the Medicis with his firebrand to preaching. He then basically ruled Florence for a few years. Um, if anything, I thought I looked kind of like Emperor Palpatine. No, there was a guy who made a what was it? It was a infomercial. Do you guys even know what infomercials are? You're probably too young. And he had an infomercial of like vacuum cleaners or something, and he um, looked a lot like me. Like it was scary how much he looked like me. Um, so that was kind of funny. My glasses look askance. That's not help. Okay, there we go. Less askance. I know you have to pray 3 times a day. I'm curious, how long are those prayers? So Shahrit, the morning prayer, is the longest one, and I mean, it depends on the day and stuff, but Shahrit is the longest one, and that usually takes around an hour. And Mincha is probably the shortest one, and you can probably get done with that in 15-20 minutes. And Arvit, the evening one, is around half an hour long. I used to spend around 2 hours a day praying. Um, can I be Jewish for the funny hats? No. Magic Bullet, always enjoyable. I am not sure what you're talking about, dear sir. Oh, I was gonna talk about Jordan Peterson and Exodus. I was disappointed. Uh, yes, anything you don't do that you should do would be a sin, and like it, I honestly think you spend too much time thinking about sins. That's not like the point, people. Infomercials, yes. Hey, Chezi. I am guessing this is your new channel. I am trying to influence several people into starting a YouTube channel, Chazi being one of them. Yehezkel. I cannot believe that Eric Weinstein, um, his he had a poll on his YouTube, and he asked if anonymous accounts make Twitter better or worse, and 34,000 votes. It's 56.5% better, 43.5% worse, which is insane in my opinion. Clearly makes things worse. Yehezkel Shraga Halevi. Shraga. To become Jewish, what do you have to do? First and foremost, and this tends to be the most difficult thing, you have to move to a Jewish community. You cannot convert to Judaism remotely. I am not aware that there is any rabbinic court anywhere which takes people who do not live within a walking distance um, of an Orthodox synagogue. I am obviously talking about Orthodox Judaism, um, and so if you do not live within the walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue, you would first have to move. But if you do live within walking distance of an Orthodox synagogue, then you should go talk to the rabbi there if you want to convert. Good thing about Jews is that they respect all religions. I don't know. I mean, we believe in a God who controls the entire world, and so I don't know if we necessarily respect all religions as much as we believe God knows what He's doing. Um, yeah, so the Exodus discussion, it was so Protestant. I mean, my hope had been that Jordan Peterson would get a group of people who were deeply steeped in the Bible and would then have a serious discussion on Exodus and its various components. The first episode, frankly, was just bad. Um, I don't know if it's true, if I would say it's even true that that there's an ambiguity, which, like Dennis Prager said, that the whether the midwives were Jewish or Egyptian, and frankly, I mean, I like Dennis Prager if his synagogue was open to the public, I probably would attend some services to see what it's like. But he is in some sense a non-denominational Jew, but in a very real sense, he's a very Protestant Jew, speaks the Protestant Jew. And so it was like a Protestant Bible study. And then during the second one, after about an hour, halfway in, they started having an actual discussion, and it was still disappointing. I was not nonplussed. It might get better as it goes along, as they get to know each other and they actually feel more comfortable discussing things. But yeah, I am going to go give Happy some water and stuff, and actually get some dinner, and I'll be back. If anybody wants to join me, there is a link you can click on. I will be back though. What did I miss? Why wasn't the Book of Esther included in the Dead Sea Scrolls? My guess, well, there are several guesses I could have, but I mean, they probably did not think of it as scripture, and the question is, why would they not think of it as scripture? There possibly, I mean, it's the Book of Esther, Scroll of Esther, talks about people converting to Judaism very explicitly. I don't know if that necessarily has something to do with it, because frankly, I mean, I think you have to be a silly person to not realize conversion to Judaism is in the rest of the Bible, but it's one of those places where people who are exceedingly silly, even they can't disagree. And then I mean, there are a few things that might be controversial. Chad,
Shalom. Shalom, as you say, sir.
I do. Isn't it like really late at night?
It's 11:27. So yes, it's about as late as the night can get, nearly. But I just came out for a smoke break before bed and thought I'd say hello.
Hello. How was your Thanksgiving?
It's good. We went to the in-laws and had some turkey, and then we came home and watched Posh and took care of Dolly.
So I think it was Cernovich who was on Twitter complaining about turkey on Thanksgiving because he's like, yeah, turkey's like the worst meat and steak and it's like, well, I didn't actually eat turkey myself, but
Hmm.
we had a turkey at and it's like, dude, there's a reason why we have turkey on Thanksgiving. It's native to North America.
Sure.
So understand your priorities. Like the symbolism is about the holiday. It's not about like which meat you prefer. Yeah, I didn't actually eat any turkey. But like that's not the point, dude.
Right. Well, I prefer a ribeye every day, but you just don't get it. Some days you just have soup or something. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was nice. Got to see some family. I mean, some of my cousins, I basically see them once a year around Thanksgiving or like at other holidays,
Hmm.
like Jewish holidays. Um, my cousin Michael is a psychiatrist and he just finished his residency and came back to Los Angeles. So I actually see him more often than I used to.
Mm,
He's been on the Discord a couple of times, but he's busy. Obviously, he's a psychiatrist.
sure.
Um, and I spent a lot of time talking to him. He's a really interesting guy.
Excellent. How are things otherwise?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Yeah. Working on my hopeful big announcement, which I think it's going to be at least a few weeks, but working on it.
Right on. I
I'm starting a master's of social work in January.
cool.
Rabbi Malot, Shavua Tov Rabbi, wants to know why you're wearing a mask.
Okay, so I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I entered this space of people that gathered around these ideas and these thinkers like Peterson and Vanderklay and the usual suspects. And I entered the space so that I could talk about spiritual matters as I related to them through Alcoholics Anonymous. And being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, we try to practice adherence to certain principles, um, not rules, but strong suggestions. One of those traditions or suggestions are called Tradition 11, and it's that we would have practice anonymity at the level of press, radio, and films, as well as uh, the internet and stuff like that. So it's just it's that, and then that coupled with it kind of worked out to where it would actually the silliness of the mask would serve my comedic desires, and so it all kind of works together.
I've actually seen him with his mask off.
Yeah, when I'm in the Discord and I'm talking to people in there, uh, as just a friend, I wouldn't wear it. You know what I mean?
Well, I also saw you in real life, and it would be very weird if you were wearing that while we saw each other in real life. You're my nephew who helps with this channel. You're definitely his favorite.
Cool.
Yeah, he just had his bar mitzvah like 6 months ago, and so he's 13,
Okay.
and yeah, he
Excellent.
finds my channel interesting, and he finds you more interesting than he finds me.
So, yeah, so that's why I wear the mask. It's again, AA doesn't have rules; they're suggestions, and it's just something that I try to adhere to. Believe me, I'd like to take it off, but I can't speak for AA as a whole, and I don't want to be, you know, um, I don't know. It's just about practicing. I guess it's a way to practice some self-sacrifice. I guess, and that's good. So, yeah. Did that Does that satisfy your question? People say that a lot. Like I was looking at some of the Vanderklay um, uh, comments and some on his channel and stuff, or even like I was on Father Eric's stream and somebody commenting and they were calling me a demon, which is hilarious. But yeah,
Hey Ariel, how you doing?
so Yeah, I just wanted to drop in. I saw you in here, and I thought I'd stop in and say hello. And now I will say a good night.
It was nice having you. Good night.
Good night.
Rabbi Malot, do you know anything about what's going on at Nativ? Because Bill, the guy who I was speaking to on Friday, um, he sent me a video, and it looks like it's the director there, and he's kind of dressed like an Orthodox rabbi, but as far as I can tell, he's not an Orthodox rabbi, and I won't point out the mistakes that made it obvious he's not an Orthodox rabbi. And I mean, as far as I can tell, there are actual Orthodox rabbis involved. So I'm not sure what's going on, because I know that Rabbi Shochat was Rabbi Shochat was very against Noachites wearing tzitzit, and certainly, but even yarmulkes. I have no content to Nativ, not on purpose, but they've never done any outreach toward me. Yeah, I mean, it's. I was. I've seen some things on their channel that seem good, and then I've seen other things on their channel that's like, eek. And frankly, I mean, if you're not Jewish, which, as far as I can tell, that guy's not, yeah. There have been some very dubious rabbis platformed at Nativ. It's a major concern. Okay, that's what I was wondering. Yeah. Honestly, I have to say, like, I'm not a huge fan of William having Rabbi Federo as a rabbi, just because he's a Reform rabbi, and it just bothers me. But like, I still like the fact. I mean, he platforms good people and stuff, and so I I support Tanakh Talk, and that's where I found you, which is a thing. I am also extremely critical and wary of the Noachites that mimic Jews and try to be pseudo Jews. They are bad news. Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other thing. My biggest criticism of the Noahide movement is how anti-Jesus it is. I mean, even the Tanakh Talk community, I have to say, there's a lot of them who feel like, who very openly will say that, you know, their family who are Christians are idolaters and stuff, and it's like, I don't know who the rabbi is that you're talking to, but your rabbi should not be should not. I mean, even to Gentiles who convert, right? I'm not sure that's not a good way of thing. I love Tanakh Talk and William Hall, but I do not endorse all his teachers. Yeah, that's basically how I feel about it. You know what bothers me? Chacham Hillel has an English language channel. He doesn't post much content to it, but it only has like 3,000 subscribers. And there are all these Kabbalists. Oh my God. And Chacham Hillel is like, as far as I know, as far as I know, Chacham Hillel is probably the most prominent English-speaking Kabbalist in the world. You don't know Chacham Hillel? Yaakov Moshe Hillel, he wrote Aronson, I think it was, or maybe it was Feldheim, translated his Kuntras Tamim Tiyu to English as basically their answer to thing. He has Shelot Chuvot out, Vayeshev Hayam. He's broadly acknowledged as I mean, at least in Haredi circles, he is acknowledged as okay, and well, yeah. So Chacham Hillel, he has a channel, and it's like tiny, and barely anybody watches it. I'm okay with being anti-Jesus because I'm pro-truth and I don't want less truth for a non-Jew. I am, however, respectful to all because that is what I feel is in keeping with the ways of our sages. Okay, I have to tell you, yeah, I changed, and frankly, before I changed my views about Jesus, I did, I was as well. But now that I know a lot more, and I have to say, I believe my views are completely consistent with Orthodox Judaism. Like, and I would be interested in speaking to you about it, but including, everything from the Talmud and everything like that. But from my knowledge, I think that generally most Jews have beliefs about Jesus that are not necessarily really about Jesus, but about the Christian concept of Jesus. And one of the little taglines I have here is, I think one of the biggest mistakes Jews have made about Jesus, one of the biggest mistakes Jews have ever made is believing what Christians have to say about Jesus. And I would say that is true even of the sages. I would say a lot of things, our sages kind of accepted what Christians had to say because they had no other information to go on. And I think the information that's available now kind of shows that Christianity is the religion about Jesus. It's not the religion that Jesus taught. And I think academics are pretty clear about that. And there are Rabbanim who said that. Most famously, the Yavits. I think it's one thing to talk about Jesus in the context of viewing him as idol worship, but non-Christian communities should just acknowledge him as an attempted social reformer that later became worshipped as a god by Greek pagans who appropriated Jewish tradition. Basically, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, Christianity, not Jesus per se, but because essentially what we know of him, we know from Christianity, it's a package deal. Well, I think we have more information now than we used to. Most Jews know Jesus as the Christian conception of God and not a Jewish idea of him as a man. We don't know what he taught, so it's not relevant. It's either Torah or it isn't. It's either true or it isn't. Right. So one of the lines that Rabbi Tovia Singer has that I really like is the New Testament is filled with many new and wonderful things. The problem is the new things are not wonderful and the wonderful things are not new. And I think what warmed me up to Jesus and Christianity was when I discovered. So I don't know if you've Chezi.
Sure.
So I was about to find your quote that you had before. So this is from Seder Olam, if I can find it. It says, where did you put it? I should just pin this somewhere. How are you doing, by the way, Chazi? Why can't it? It's not even searching the Hebrew. Oh, here it is. Okay. So this is from Seder Olam Rabbah, Lamed Hey to Lamed Zayin, and Sefer Shimush, Tetvav to Yud Zayin. That's the thing. Rabbi Yaakov Emden Yavetz Katav Ki Hanotzri Asa Tova Kefula Be'olam Mitzad Echad Chizak Torat Moshe Bechol Oz ואין אחד מחכמנו שדיבר יותר מזה בפה מלא בחיוב קיום נצחי לתורה, ומצד אחר לאומות העולם היטיב הרבה שביטל עבודה זרה והסיר הפסילים מהם וחייב אותן בשבע מצוות בני נוח שלא יהיו כבהמות השדה, and that's Chazi's favorite part of this. That's a joke, inside joke. וזיכה להם במידות מוסריות, נוצרים הם קהילות שפועלות לשם שמיים, שנועדו להשיגם. כוונתם היא לשם שמיים ושכרם לא ימנה. So that's from Seder Olam Rabbah, and I've heard. I've never been able to find it inside, but I've heard it of it before, and I trust Chazi. But yeah. So the Yavetz's view is not generally accepted, and he wrote what he wrote under duress from Christians, so it's not a reliable record of his actual opinion. I didn't know that it was under duress, but yeah, it is not accepted. I don't see any problem with it. I mean, as an opinion, it seems like a valid opinion, and frankly, I think what he says is true. Like, a lot of his teachings were just ripped from the Talmud. Yes, this is true. Right? What's true is not new, and whether switching devices. הישן יתחדש והחדש יתקש. Yitkash. Okay. This is reflected also in the writing of the Meiri and some later writers that the pejorative statements of the Talmud regarding non-Jews were specific to the uncivilized heathens of their time. Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, this gets into a lot of things and maybe a discussion that's better not had in public. But let me put it this way. Sefer Arachim Chabad, which Rabbi Yoel Kahn put together, which is a encyclopedia of Hasidic thought, and he was told to write it by the Rebbe. He only got, I believe, to Daled before he died, and he was working on it for a good 40, 50 years. And it's like in 7 volumes, and he only got to Daled. But under Umot HaOlam, he has a very comprehensive, it's like 40 pages long, discussion of exactly what, at the very least, the Rebbe and the Chabad Rebbeim have to teach about the about Umot HaOlam specifically. And frankly, I think when read in context and read correctly, it shows a very different view than unfortunately too many people have. How are you doing, Chazi?
Thank God, I'm doing well. Shavua Tov, how are you, sir?
Shavua Tov, very well. Rabbi Malot says, but Christians and Muslims of today, and he wrote this in the 12th century, essentially have the status of Ger Toshav. I mean, I think most people say that Muslims are Noahides if they abide by their religious teachings, which that's a whole other thing. Seder Olam that I am familiar with is a work from the Mishnaic period, so cannot cite Yavetz. I don't know what you were reading from. No. I think that's the Seder Olam of the Chida that it was quoting from. I'm pretty sure it's the Seder Olam Rabbah of the Chida. I think, right, Fezi? Where did you get the quote from? And it looks like we lost Fezi again. It's not at all simple that Muslims are considered Noahides, certainly not according to Maimonides. Really? I thought he was the one who said that it's not. I thought he was the one who said that it's mutar to whatchamacallit, to that it was. I don't know about mutar. That it's not Yaharek Val Yavor to pretend to accept Islam under duress. Isn't that what Maimonides said?
Yeah, there's some shitas like that. Rav Netanel Payumi also talks about that as well, the chief rabbi of Yemen at the time. I was just following your some of the conversations going on over here, and I actually wanted to have a conversation with you about this more in depth. But I was telling you that I had a conversation with Rabbi Sarel Rosenblatt on Friday. So after some back and forth, I went over to his house. We sat down and we had a nice conversation. To people that are viewing, Rav Sarel Rosenblatt is one of 3 rabbis that just published a book called "His Name Is One," and it's about healing the relations with the other world religions, which is very relevant in a certain case of this little corner. and something that Jacob and I have been talking about. So, I asked him, like, first of all, how'd the community react to this? Did you get like a lot of pushback for some of the things you're writing over here? As controversial of seeing Muhammad as a prophet, playing around with the
Really? You
idea
went that far? Muhammad as a prophet?
that far. I mean, the apologetics on, let's say, on the Jewish side is that they'll say that one should be seeing him as Muhammad, for example, as a lesser level of prophecy than Moses had, but nevertheless, there shouldn't be an issue with Judaism accepting such an idea. All the way to Rav Kook himself mentioning that it is not far-fetched for us to believe that as part of God's greater plan of allowing other religions to express themselves, even giving them leaders who can perform miracles. Now, I dug down on that. I'm like, okay, this seems sort of like a quote, which you're saying, if push comes to shove, if you had to be asked, wait, like, is it possible that, some of the things we hear Jesus did, is that possible? So from what you understand from Rav Kook reading into that, he's giving himself like a little backdoor saying even that would be okay. However, and I saw this in some of the comments over here, Christianity and it's very nice to look at Rav Yaakov Emden giving attitude saying Paul and Jesus were really just trying to create a universal Sheva Mitzvos Bnei Noach to the world and not necessarily, these were just two good Jewish dudes doing the best they can to the world, but we misunderstood them. However, 2,000 years after, Jesus and Christianity, in a certain extent, are a package deal. So, it was mentioned over here. So it's I don't know how much sense it makes to sort of separate Jesus as look at his. Well, Father DeYoung is doing this. Look at his historical background in a certain sense and see him as quote unquote Jew, not Christian. I don't know if that's a feasible ask. However, on our end, on let's say the Jewish end, I think it's a lot healthier to have a conversation where you could balance two of those things and see even Jesus and even Muhammad as divine figures. And this relates to something I said to Paul in our first conversation, which was, would there be a space for, I guess, Jesus to be downgraded, upgraded in the Jewish eyes and downgraded in the Christian eyes to a certain extent? And I don't know if that's possible. However, and I'll just end on this rant on this, that there are other sages that use terminology that is quite surprising to me. Christianity and Judaism are springing from the same well. We're part of the same tree. Harav Minatu says that the only way we're going to know, Christians are going to know themselves better and Jews are going to know themselves better, is if we dive deeper into the mysteries of Israel. So now it's always caveated with, we have to do our thing, they have to do their thing. But to me, it was a lot more open conversation, less of the kumbaya that you were talking about, that I am also less eager about. And he said something that was very interesting to me, which was, we always start off in the safe spaces. And I was mentioning this to you, where it's just obviously that's a woke term today, a safe space where everyone could talk whatever they want. However, he says that in this kind of conversation, it behooves us to engage the brave space and then go deeper in and really challenge ourselves to try to dig deeper and understand better. So hence, I think this is definitely someone that I would like to try to involve in this channel. But those were my thoughts.
So, Rabbi Malot, I very much appreciate all the stuff you said. I was not aware of those things about Rambam, and I would be very interested. Both, I have not read his letters, and I know that at least some of these things come from his letters, and there's some question exactly if that's Piskei Halacha or an Etzah or whatever, but I would be interested in speaking to you. as far as what you were saying, Chazi, um, lots of comments, but first I would say, while my channel is your channel, definitely, I think that you starting a channel and having discussions with people like this rabbi would would be great, and then I don't have to worry about all the Zionist rabbis that you um, are promoting here. But when it comes down to discussing, I think really, I mean, the kumbaya aspect is the important thing to talk about, right? So for the peanut gallery, um, I really dislike. Well, there is a definite place for people being polite and civil to their neighbors, and so when, for example, at USC, when the other religious groups wanted to do an interfaith thing, right? Rabbi Wagner would go and say a psalm or something, right? And then he would leave, and it would be like, I'm trying to be nice, but this is not what I'm here for, right? And certainly it wasn't serious engagement, right? And there is that, so that's what I call the kumbaya dialogues, right? Which are cute, and there's a place for them, I guess.
Well, contrast that to Rav Soloveitchik, the Rav. Just there's two Ravs. There's Rav Kook and there's Rav Soloveitchik. It depends where you are, basically. And there's the Rebbe. The Rebbe's something else.
Only one Rav Soloveitchik, but okay.
Yeah, in Israeli circles, there's another Rav. By the way, it's Harav in Hebrew and the Rav.
Yeah,
Rav Soloveitchik.
Yeah,
but
because Harav, we don't need to get into it.
Right. So he has his famous essay Confrontation, where he talks about sort of dealing with the Christian community, and ultimately he says that, like, I don't need a Christian or a Muslim to teach me about theology. That's what he comes off saying, and he says what we should be focusing on is the community, all those shared things that we need from a social things, sure. But like, aside from that, we don't need to be getting into that conversation. And maybe there's a time and place for that. And I think it's pretty clear. I definitely think that is the conversation we should be getting into. When I was asking this rabbi, I'm like, also, I noticed that you guys didn't deal at all with the Eastern religions. So that's book number 3. Book number 2 is going to be on Islam, and they're translating this first book into English and into Arabic as well, which also I'm very, very happy about. So that was great. He said the reactions from the community were some people got very excited. And like, they hear about this, they get very excited. This is amazing. So that I was very happy to hear that. And he said some people were just, why are you even dealing with this? There's still, stuff within the Jewish community that needs to be dealt with. How are you wasting your time with outside of community? However, I very much believe that, first of all, they're not exclusive. And second of all, it could easily be that dealing with the exterior will allow us to work better on the interior. It doesn't mean one needs to just focus on the exterior. It's clearly a conversation that's lacking. So they're opening up this Beit Medrash, and they're trying to be as constantly maintain a halachic spine to it, structure to it, to constantly be going back and referencing this. We got a little into Hilchot Shituf on the prohibition of non-Jews worshiping God with another entity. Now, there is a machloket there between the Ashkenazim and the Sephardim, as you know, as we discussed in the past. And it was a real question. I was asking a little deeper, like, how did he see, like, I understand Unitarians on one end, but like, there's different versions, and it's seemingly, the Rambam is obviously very, very extreme about this. But it would seem today that there's a lot more room to accept Shituf, definitely on the Ashkenaz part, and all the way to language that clearly, which is a very Pajoian language, which also I'm sure you're aware of, Jacob, that they claim Christianity misrepresents Kabbalah, right, and are taking those concepts and really giving them sort of a human form, all the way to just earlier renditions of religion, which is, and the Rambam talks about this as well, that the world was really immersed the world was in a religious framework at the time in the past. And while people recognized God as like the main entity, there were still other forces that people were playing around with at the time. And as long as God is seen as at the top of the hierarchy, Shituf is more permissible. Once you start getting to, they're on equal footing, they represent the same thing, it gets a little more hairy. But again, I was very surprised to see a quote unquote Orthodox rabbi living in Efrat, part of a community, not like, seen as Orthodox mainstream. So yes, they see him as more on the liberal side, but was accepted. And I asked them what was the pushback on this book from the other rabbis. So they said they sent them out. There was no official pushback. They said they sent it to Rav Moshe Feinstein, who said he loved it, but he's not sure if he read the book or not, because I was like crazy surprised if he's saying that like.
Hold on, what do you mean Rav Moshe Feinstein?
Sorry, Rav Lichtenstein. Sorry, Rav Lichtenstein. Sorry. Back from the dead. No, they all right. They gave it to Rav Lichtenstein. That's what killed him. Now I said, okay, when is it coming out in English? So they said they're working on that. They got all the funding for that already. So I guess that'll also be a big tell. However, I did see that this book was on the YU. I saw in a YU newsletter of Yeshiva University, and they were also promoting the book, saying that not everyone's necessarily going to agree with the conclusions. However, you could see that someone had Yirat Shamayim, someone had the fear of God when writing this book. So that's their little legal language to make sure they're covered. But I think there still will be ripples from this book.
What kind of haskamas does it have?
What kind of haskamas does it have? I could open up and look at the haskamas. It's not with me right now. But I mean, it's part of the Or Torah Stone institution, which is Rav Rifkin's institution. Rav Rifkin is definitely recognized in Israel as a rabbi.
Definitely recognized in the very rabidly Zionist circles, yes.
Yeah, put away the Zionist stuff. That's your own thing.
No. You can't just represent your small faction as being.
You mean most Jews living in Israel? That small faction? Most Jews in the world? Jacob?
Chazi?
Yeah. Is the small faction you're talking about most of the Jews in the world living in Israel?
No, I am talking about Efrat and the rabbis who. Thank you very much. Rabbi Riskin is himself a controversial figure. Yes, he is. Of course he is. Because he's not Zionist.
Who's not? Rav Feinstein is controversial to other modern Orthodox people.
Hold on. There is a whole Ada Haredis, right? Yes, you sound very myopic, Chazi. I'm surprised at you.
Mm-hmm. Wait, go on. I don't want to cut you off.
There's a whole Ada Haredis, and there's the yeshivish, and there are Rabbanim which do not agree with Riskin and Efrat and Gush Amunim and
But if we're going to boil it down to that point all the time, I'm taking a larger picture. Rav Riskin is recognized by the Moatzah Da'at. He's recognized by the government as a religious leader. He is allowed to convert people. He's allowed to marry people. So as far as
he's a controversial person,
so is the Rebbe. People think it's controversial that people. Okay, so if you're waiting for me to tell you, who this goes back to the conversation I also have. I'm looking at my phone, so I'm hard to see these like lines of you. Rav Feinstein, Rav Ovadia are far more widely accepted. Yes, you are correct. They are much more widely accepted. I couldn't agree more. Right now, we're talking about a topic that is obviously clearly controversial, and this channel is controversial, and the rabbi that's commenting right now on this channel itself is controversial. So if we were in a conversation where Rav Ovadia Yosef said this, you and I could close our channels, Jacob, right? Then we don't have to have this anymore. We're obviously here. So I'm saying that people that, yes, we could call them controversial. However, they are still within the fold. I'm not finding you a rabbi in the middle of a cave.
Okay. Let's define some boundaries here. I think you and I are completely in agreement that whatever it is, it needs to be within the Daled Amos of Halacha. I talk a lot about the 4 cubits of Halacha, right? That there are different corners, and there are, but ultimately, that's were you here when I was talking to Rabbi Malot about Tanakh Talk?
I was just hearing it.
Yeah. So for example, they have one rabbi there he's a Reform rabbi, but I've never heard him say anything that's outside of Orthodoxy. But even the fact that they're calling him a Reform rabbi already, for me, that's a problem. Because I am not doing this in order to certainly not to improve my theological knowledge, right? If I want to learn Torah, I will go learn Torah, and I will go to Rabbanim to learn Torah. I don't go to Paul Vanderklay to learn Torah from him. And I think that's part of the problem of Jewish engagement is some people want to proselytize. They want to convert people to Judaism. And obviously that's forbidden and it's wrong. So people are like, well, if that's not what you're doing, then are you having a good faith dialogue? As far as I know, Rabbi Fedorov was ordained Reform, and he's become very, very Orthodoxish. And so he's not a normal Reform rabbi, but as far as I remember, he's a thing. But but it's not for me. It's about this is don't bother with that. But this is why am I engaging? Honestly, I'm engaging because people are asking me questions, and there's nobody better for them to ask questions from. And it feels to me like I've been put in a situation by Hashem to actually,
Okay, so I want to, as you're framing it like this, because let's say this is separate in a certain extent from this little corner of the internet, okay? Because there's a subgroup as we're discussing this, or a subcategory, which is your conversation last night. I'm forgetting his name, the foster parent.
Bill.
Okay, my son's name is Bill. Okay, so Bill.
You named your son Bill?
His name is his Hebrew name is Zev Nachum Halevi, but his English name is Bill after my wife's grandfather. So we call him Bill. When you're talking to Bill and you're saying that he wears tzitzis and you the fringes, and you make the connection to like from the verse in the Bible where they're going to hold on to the Jews, right? So that to me is why you're here, right? I'm saying, so that is now. Then once you're in that position, the question is like, what do you do about that, right? So now you're trying to make. I'm not saying you're trying to make a movement, but you're talking to Lee Baker and you're trying to piece this together. And hence part of my interest in this as well is also like there does need to be an answer to that. Next week this Thursday I'm going to an event with Rav Shirky and Rabbi Nagan, and they're specifically talking about Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach. Now Rav Shirky's attitude is Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach is the top. That's all you can do, and that's sort of where it ends over there, and that's part of the conversation you're having, which is, where's my community? And even though Rav Shirky made a great book, like you're mentioning, you open up inside and it's talked Dinei Nefashot, and it's like very intense. Rav Sarel Rosenblum's attitude would be no, and again, quoting from different sources, that Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach is the baseline. And that, you could expand from there and all the way down to Rav Emden saying that's the move that, let's say, Jesus and Paul were trying to pull off, basically, is make like a universal religion with the foundations of Sheva Mitzvah B'nai Noach. Another thing is people should recognize that the Rambam also says that if a Noah wants to keep more mitzvahs, he could still be Zocher for Sachar. He just can't, he could merit and there's value to it, and he gets quote unquote reward for that. However, there's not congregating. But even that, I don't think people are aware of. Please go ahead.
So, and this goes back to something Rabbi Malot said earlier, and obviously you're always welcome, Rabbi Malot, to jump in. But we're doing this diyun of what is lechatchila, what is like, and for me, it seems that it's not really part of the halachic pastoral understanding that needs to be there, right? So when we talk about chidush dat, right? Is it okay? It's not permissible to start a new religion, right? Mm-hmm. But is it chidush dat when somebody who was raised in a religion comes to Jews and says, is what I am doing okay or not, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I'm not trying to establish a religion, and I don't think we should try to establish a religion. The fact is that these are people with minhag avotehem beyedehem, right? And because of that minhag, they have been taught and believe that they should come ask Rabbanim for Horah, and those Rabbanim are sitting around talking Chidush Dat, and it's like, look, this is somebody who's asking you for a Pasak Din of whether or not I can go to a Christmas party of my parents. Right. Okay. So what's your concern though? Because it again, and in let's say this book's Mahalach, and in what they're trying to pave or articulate would be that there are narratives of prophecy, and there are narratives of prophecy where there's hierarchy of prophecy, where we run supreme, and like there's Jewish law on the land, and there's prophecies where Beit Tfilah Yikara L'Chol Amim, people come and recognize God and recognize Judaism and come pray in our temple. However, they then go back to their own area. And this goes back to Mitzrayim, Egypt, Ami, my people, and Ashur, Maaseh Yadai. Now, the only people that are called Ami, my people, are us. So to be calling, for the prophet to be calling the Egyptians Ami, is to showing you that there is a place and time where the other world religions can also be recognized. So much so I'm forgetting the exact phrase, but the attitude is that they will come to the house of the Lord
worship, and then go back to their homes, to their gods, as in realizing, still allowing them to balance between our God, recognizing the one true Lord, and still practicing their version, their cultural version of religion. And the whole book is trying to frame that is, not only is that permissible, but potentially that is how it's supposed to look like.
Okay, but Chazi, ultimately, when it comes down to it, all I want is for Rabbanim to feel a chiyuv to actually answer a psak din. If a Gentile comes to you for a psak din, you should paskin it the same way you would paskin for a yid.
So well, two things. Yes, well,
like it's not lechatchila. When somebody comes and asks for a psak din, it's not lechatchila. It's b'di'evet, and we keep on talking about things lechatchila, and it's not a lechatchila situation. And I think part of the problem is actually the fact that the people who get involved in it are the people who are messianists and think, lechatchila, it's lechatchila, this is how it should be. And it's like, I'm a different type of messianist.
Wait, so how when Jacob says lechatchila, he says, like, for starters, basically that should be like the default. I'm asking you, what do you think it should be for starters when you're saying like that it shouldn't be lechatchila?
Lechatchila is Mashiach comes and tells us exactly how the world's going to be. I mean,
but Jacob, I would say that in these conversations, for example, it would be the groundwork would be better prepared if, let's say, we stopped using terminology like the Old Testament, right? That would be an example of, in this community, if that kind of conversation happens, like in 1965, if the Pope is saying the Israelites are our brothers and perhaps our older brothers, right? That is a different conversation than it was in the 30s, and it was in the 1800s, 1700s. So there's milestones. We have to highlight them. And again, you're saying I want rabbis to be able to now come and answer and engage on this level. Most rabbis either know and feel uncomfortable, are ignorant, okay, or are know a little but we're never aware of how deep the rabbit hole goes to a certain extent. So again, I look at this book as like a huge move on this front to push us. Now, I think to myself, like, I was talking to this rabbi and he's like, I'm totally down to come speak. Great. My question would be, like, I would want him to, like, what would you want him to talk to Paul about? Let's say, if you wanted him to talk to, you'd be like, I don't want him to talk to Paul. Like, where would you see, how would you set up a conversation? Like, give a conversation about like a summary of your book, talk about your 3 narratives, see how we could work like together. Would that be like interesting for people? Would it be more specific to be, because like you said, I'm not looking to like, have Paul be like, I got you, Paul, and like, now you're really Jewish. Like that's not the interest.
So I tried to get Rabbi Malott to reach out to speak to Paul, and frankly, I think a better discussion than really discussing religion would be a discussion of just living together. Like, we live in a society where important things are happening that Orthodox Jews and religious Christians, Rabbi Malott, we'll talk.
If you need a comment, go ahead and comment about what he said.
Oh no, he just. I thought you were going to put us in touch. I can and I will. But yeah.
Put who in touch? Him and I?
Yeah, Rabbi Malota and PVK.
Rabbi Noam PVK. Gotcha.
Yeah. What was I saying? I was saying I misunderstood Rabbi Malot, what you meant by keep in touch. Put in touch. Chazi, what was I talking about?
You were talking about that there's things are happening in the world, and Orthodox Jews and religious Christians.
Yeah, so things are happening. For example, the whole trans thing, or the gay marriage thing, or the ordination of women thing, right? These are social influences that are influencing our world together, and there's no reason why conservative Christians, and I don't mean that politically conservative, I mean religiously conservative Christians, and religiously conservative Jews cannot work together towards aims that we agree with.
So I'm going back to the famous confrontation with Rabbi Soloveitchik. So his attitude would be like, yeah, we have plenty of social things to connect on. So let's connect on those social things. Funding for schools, education, like you could be like family, but his attitude is like, but don't get into this little corner of the internet with regards to theology, Trinity, what does it mean, Shituf. He's like, no, don't do that.
So this is the second thing. The fact is, Christians ask Jews questions, and Jews think, oh, you're trying to get me into a religious discussion because you want to convert me. And we have had this attitude for a very long time for very good reason. And there's also the very real fear we've had for a very long time that anything we tell them will be. So, for example, this one video, I don't want to say what exactly he mispronounced, which told me, yeah, this guy's never been to yeshiva, because if I did, then he's just going to know how to not to mispronounce those words. And, what good has that done in the world, right? And I think we've often had that belief that if we show Christians how they're obviously wrong in many places, then we're going to somehow make a bad thing look better, right? You're basically polishing a turd, right?
Yeah, but the Meiri comes and says Rav Kook is sort of confounded a little, or how do Christians still get to their belief in God while getting rid of the mitzvahs and getting rid of and changing different concepts. However, the Meiri's attitude to that is, okay, so we just don't have to understand. That's not, they clearly do it. They're clearly connected. They didn't do it via our system. And our job is not to go back and tell them no, you have to believe in God via these mitzvahs necessarily.
Well,
that's
okay. I mean, that's a whole debate to have. But the fact is, right now, the real world situation is we have Christians who are asking questions not because they're trying to not because they're trying to deceive anybody or find ways of destroying Judaism or anything like that. They're asking because they honestly want to know, and it's and especially when, look, there is a completely different thing when a Gentile is coming and asking a rabbi for a psak din, and there are Gentiles who want piskei din. Right?
You're right, and that's why, as you're saying that, in a sense, this is where this little corner is relevant, and I would also mention Jordan Peterson, because part of that phenomenon was it opened up a door in many people. For all intents and purposes in this conversation, Christians, into re-examining and rethinking about the Bible or the Tanakh or their story. which I believe led to, like you're saying, honestly coming from a place of good faith and wanting to better understand their relationship with God and via this book. So here comes people like all the people you talk to on Just Chatting, that specifically the Noahites, that want to know, that want to understand better, all the way to conversations that we have with Paul or Sam, where you could see. I'm just going to mention another thing about this. The Meiri also talks about there's a halachic concept called shalom kfula, like a double hello. And what does a double hello mean? And this is like a fear of like, would you get into this with a Christian, and can you do this? And the Meiri says a double hello is where you create a relationship of love and understanding, like a deep soul connection with a Christian. Not only is that permitted, he also says that we have to make sure that their crops are okay, that their food is okay. We have to make sure that we sustain them. So the Meiri sees that not only is like, can you say hi to them in the market, but building a loving relationship is also included. And I look at part of this community as, while I have my own religious community, there's something beautiful about reaching out and having a larger community of God-fearing and God-loving people. So I see that not as kumbaya, just as that is the foundation you need to move forward. And all the way back to the Jordan Peterson Exodus series, which I haven't started watching, but I'm hearing people are not so happy about it so far. That
I didn't like it.
Right, but like think of if they had some of like, the energy that you have on the Bridge of the Meaning, or these kind of conversations on, there at that level.
Yeah.
But they don't have that. That's not that kind of conversation going on. So this forum, I think, allows you to, this forum develops a type of people that are very interested in championing that kind of book that, let's say, just came out.
Rabbi Malat wants to know where you're quoting from the Meiri.
From the Tova Kfula. My notes are not in front of me right now, but I have no problem saying this later today. Tova Kfula Meiri. But you could tell the rabbi to definitely, I recommend the book.
So there's a book, Ushmo Echad, I guess it's called.
Yeah, Ushmo Echad.
And that it's by Sarel.
Well, three. I'm on three different rabbis, but yeah, I definitely recommend. I definitely recommend reading it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, again, all the sources are there. They do a fantastic job, including a deep dive into all the sources. But you can tell the rabbi, I don't have it in front of me right now, but I'll send over later to the Tova Kfula. But yeah, I was. The second you sent me that video of him doing the vigil, and you're like, I can't handle this. I was like, okay, I have to talk to Jacob about this to clear his name out. About just as far as the Jordan Peterson conversation, I am a little sad that like Dennis Prager is he's like the resident Jew.
Well, look, all of the people around the table were not the people that Jordan Peterson should have been having the discussion with. So this is the precise opposite of what Father Stephen DeYoung does, which is he contacted me because he wants to know what somebody who actually believes in Orthodox Judaism, right?
Well, you could say that's Dennis Prager, though. You could argue we say Dennis Prager is fairly well versed,
and he's believing, but unfortunately, they're all so Protestant. None of them are standing on the shoulder of giants. None of them are representing the tradition. He wants to know how he gets the book in the United States. Is it available on Kindle? If not, you're gonna have to ask Chezi to ship it to you all the way from.
First of all, if you want it, I will gladly ship it to you all the way. It's not a problem at all. Let's see, Sefer. Well, I saw it in the YU thing. So where did they have it? I'm looking for it. 1 second, Rabbi. Sorry.
I mean, he's outspoken about being non-denominational, but
Who is
he's
this?
closer. Rabbi Malot was saying Prager is outspoken about not being Orthodox. He claims to be non-denominational, and and rationalist and all that stuff. I'm not a huge fan. I mean, I am a fan. I like him, but I'm not a huge fan of his religion as a thing.
Jacob, I'm gonna post. Can I post the link from my phone? I'm trying to see if I could do that right now. Okay, that's fine. Another thing this rabbi was talking about, which was interesting, was 1 second. If I leave this, do I disconnect?
I can't see your video anymore.
A UBM, he called it, a universal bar mitzvah. And he asked about, like, what about doing something, like he had this initiative he was thinking about of offering to different communities, and it could be with Jewish sources. It could be a combination of their own like sources that they want to integrate, but like offer it to kids to have like a, you don't have to read from the, like, you don't have like your weekly reading, but it's a parent, community, child thing that they do together, and really allow like across the globe, allow people to have like these like religious little mini bar mitzvahs. And I thought that's actually like it wasn't like the worst idea if people are looking for some sort of stretch.
At least I didn't hear the beginning of what you were saying. Whose idea? What mini bar mitzvah for what?
Okay, can you hear me?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here, I'm listening to you, and you're talking about something. I'm like, I must have missed the beginning because
this rabbi that I was talking to that wrote this book asked me when we were sort of wrapping up. He said, like, what do you think? I had this idea of a UBM, a universal bar mitzvah. And he said, like, that would be something that you could offer to other communities, where they, people, you want to get kids back into it, basically. And you offer like a study group with a child, like there could be Christian motifs, there could be Jewish motifs that are woven together, and it's done with part of the community. It could be a learning that they do together with their parent. And just sort of offer that to, just not like non-Jews. Now, even like there's the classic Hollywood bar mitzvah where like a kid whose voice is cracking is trying to read and has no idea what he's saying. I'm sure there's communities that take it.
This is Chidush Dot that like I am not.
Why is that Chidush Dot? You didn't come and say that this person needs to now there is a halachic status to this. You're just offering a cultural thing that kids could build in church right now. How do I get my kids to be more involved? Okay, my study group, my Bible group. Okay, when they get to a certain age, it has nothing to do with bar mitzvah. If they want to take it seriously, then it would be, I don't know, think of Jonathan Peugeot. There was these videos of him talking to these college students. So Jonathan Peugeot comes and sits down with this group in Sacramento, wherever, and has like a little breakdown and talks about these things. And like, I think you don't have to call it a universal bar mitzvah. You could just call it a coming of age, a rite of passage, whatever you want to call it. You could re-engage people into this if you create like a little ceremony around it.
Yeah, create a little ceremony around it. I don't like it. I don't like creating ceremonies.
All right. I mean, you're talking about creating structure. So like
structure.
Right. So the trade school is just a prolonged version of that, where you're working and you're doing stuff. I'm talking about, you want this guy to come to trade school. How at 13? How at 12 are you engaging this person? How at these earlier ages are you making sure that they are interested in, getting into the Bible or reading it so like that intensely and enjoying it the way we're enjoying it right now?
Well, ultimately, I think if we're engaging with people that young, we need to be engaging through their parents, not through themselves. Like-
sure. So I'm saying, so the point would be, you offer a parent, hey, if you're looking to engage more, we could build you a format that allows you to do that. Read these 7 books with your child. This is a good way to explain this to them, and talk about these X stuff. So you don't then sit with the local rabbi. We have the experience of doing this for many centuries of this rite of passage. So you could sort of frame this in a certain way for Gentiles to allow them to do that. Now you could look like what estuary is. So it would be a mini version of, let's say, pastor or community leader, the kid's parents and him having, or let's say the kid's friends and a few parents having a discussion.
My thought has been more along the lines of, well, I mean, it's 2 separate things, right? There's the question of how do we engage, how I would like the Jewish community to engage, and second, what I think this little corner needs to do. And they're 2 different questions, right? This little corner, as a group of people who have made friends and are working together, and I want to see structure with, that's what you're talking about makes sense from that standpoint. I guess I wear 2 different hats, and in one sense, I'm trying to get the Jewish community to realize there is an internal Jewish problem with how we deal with Gentiles as Jews. At the same time, I am seeing this because I am involved in this little corner of the internet. So, am I making any sense?
Not yet. I'm sort of with you, but like I need you to finish that off.
Okay.
But take your time, Jacob. This is a safe space. It's all okay.
I can't wait to meet you. Look, so I've made this analogy a bunch of times about ikvata the Mashiach, right? The heels touching, right?
Shari loved that.
Yeah. And I feel like, you have 2 different heels that are touching. And in a very real sense, I am trying to wash feet, as in remove the barriers on both sides, right? Mm-hmm. Now, on a very real sense, like coming from Yiddishkeit, I want everything to be kosher on the Jewish side, and being put in this place from a very secular life, right? I did not get involved in this little corner because I was Jewish, or for any Jewish thing. I got involved for everything that's not Jewish, right? And so when you talk about, for example, a mini bar mitzvah, right? Or a universal bar mitzvah, from a Jewish standpoint, I hate that idea. Absolutely hate it, right? But from a completely secular view, this little corner view, I think that might be something that this little corner might want to look into as drawing from the wisdom of Yiddishkeit, right?
Let me ask, when you say from a Jewish perspective, I hate that. Why do you hate that?
Because you're not getting it from anywhere in the Torah. Like where is this idea of a
Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach? That's where it comes from. Sheva mitzvahs b'nei Noach is it's undergirding, it's underpinning those, the moral landscape for when to work off of. Now, to better understand that, and again, that's I would say that is the lowest point. You could expand from there. So a way to expand through that would be, you could then look at other religions and say like, okay, what tools are they using to do that? Right? I'm not asking them, we should now read from the daily portion just like the Jews do every day. Let's just do exactly what the Jews were doing. That's not the requirement. A Muslim doesn't see Shekhinah the way we do. There isn't that embodiment of Shekhinah. So like telling him about Shekhinah would be ridiculous because that's not in his theology. So they don't have to be importing necessarily our concepts. However, our tools and our methods for certain elements, more specifically, how do you engage children? How do you engage children into this? So a way to do that would be, okay, so I'm going to have, like you're saying, I look at a universal bar mitzvah just like we have a synagogue and they have a church. These are just certain elements that you need to create the structure. So I'm with you. I would like it. I hear what you're saying. Calling it like a bar mitzvah is like, giving it that, let's say, that Jewish title, which is like what I sort of want to refrain from. So the answer is like, sure, I'm using that because that's the term that is, you could associate very quickly with sort of what I'm doing, the age group I'm talking about, but it would be more of a technology that they would use. And just in general, there's the famous pasuk from Yeshayahu, which is Ani Hashem be'ita chishena, right? That like when it's time, I will quicken the redemption. And Chachamim in the sages in Masechet Sanhedrin, I think, say Zachu achishena lo zachu be'ita. And if we were holy enough, then it'll happen. God will hasten the redemption, and if not, then it'll happen in its due time. But again, it's really much. This goes back to the narrative stories that it could be a narrative where like there's wars for there to be peace, or there's narratives that we could work together. God is giving us options, and even when He's writing this Beitach Yishana, like if we create the proper groundwork, then it will be quickened. If we're hesitant and our attitude is like, when the time's ready, it will come. So then we're never going to get to the place where we're like Esther. And, Mordechai is telling us, right? Maybe for this moment, you've come. So when I hear you talking, Jacob, about like, again, like Bill is telling you, and you're saying I'm crying, Bill, from hearing you talk about like these, of holding on the fringes. So so you're Esther. Aren't you Persian also? Aren't you Furley from there you go. Okay. You're the Queen Esther. She was fabulous. And you take that with a lot of responsibility, but you remember Esther and Mordechai. Her name is a idol worship name. Mordechai is from Marduk. That's another idol worship name. They were completely assimilated inside that culture. You don't hear about Mordechai. You hear that he didn't bow down and things like that, but not about his conversations about waking up every morning and praying every day. Rabbi wrote over here, I don't think that's what Chazal meant. That I know what Chazal is writing that they're talking about if we were holy enough. I'm connecting that pasuk to other concepts in Judaism, and I'm looking again like there are multiple different revelations with regards to their redemption. Many of them contradict themselves greatly. Now you could come and say, just like and the Gemara talks about this as well, just like a prophet, each prophet's prophecy is different than the next. Like they receive the same prophecy, but the vessel, they interpret it differently. However, they don't interpret it backwards, or they don't interpret it completely negating each other. So from there being complete peace and working together with the Gentile to Ezekiel saying the Gentile is not allowed inside to the temple at all. So there's a two completely different revelations, and what I'm suggesting is that these are breadcrumbs from God telling us these are realities you could choose from. Just like the prophet is saying, God is not saying that this is 100% going to happen. He gives you the option to manifest together with him your own redemption. So you could look at the pasuk zachu achishana la zachu beita means if they were holy or not. I'm just translating holy into being properly oriented. Wow, I have Yosef and Ariel over here.
Hey, what's up?
This is the most amount of
The most Jews. There you go.
Shavua Tov.
What's up? Shavua Tov. Yosef, what are you thinking? I saw you commenting over there. Hit us. Tell us how we're mistaken. Lead us to the light.
One, your talented.
We can barely hear you. Aren't you don't you have a PhD in
The dissertation. This is a break from the dissertation. He's just he's just absorbing more energy so he could get back to it.
Oh, he should be writing his dissertation, but you would think his equipment would work better as a computer engineer. But he always
I never go on your channel. Why would it work better?
It's the cobbler's son,
Is it better now?
So Yosef, tell us. Yeah, much better.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah, that was the default settings in StreamYard. Cool. No, I think, one, I don't know that you guys are totally disagreeing, but I think if there's any disagreement here, it's, and this was my comment, that, that I don't, when we talk about what Chidush Da'at is, you're not defining what Da'at is, and that's going to be a big part of this, right? Like, what is the prohibition here exactly? Chezi thinks, we can create rituals. I know there's, isn't Rabbi Shirky, doesn't he also have a liturgy that he's created for Noahide a little bit?
Yeah.
Is that, if that's not Da'at, then is, teaching, some sort of symbolic, re-enchanted Kabbalistic worldview Da'at? Like, what is Da'at? Or giving a halachic status? That was the other thing that you guys said.
I mean,
I think if there's any debate here, that's where it's going to be. Is like, at what point is this over the line? Yes, chachila, diavad, whatever. But you
let
need
me
to pin this
just make
down.
clear. I think we all know this, but maybe for the audience, we're saying chidush da'at as in not chidush da'at. So it's the word da'at means is usually translated as religion, but it's ceremonies, right? I actually don't know. I'm pretty sure Maimonides says that it is forbidden for Gentiles to create regulations, right? Create religious regulations. Dalet Taf, no ayin. As opposed to da'at, which means knowledge.
Yeah, that's also on me. I was tired and I typed my comment thinking it was that. Yeah.
You have to see though how, like, again, the Rambam is very specific about this. And as far as he's concerned, Sheva Mitzvah Noach originates from Moshe, right? So it's all coming back to Moshe. Now, it's not necessarily, even according to Maimonides, as long as you understand your point of origin, I don't necessarily know if it's a new dot, if that's what it's connected to as far as the spectrum. And arguably you could then come and say, why am I necessarily looking at this from, again, unlike Maimonides, why am I looking at this necessarily from Moshe? However, I'm looking at this again like more that these are universal truths that the world is sharing that they could work off of. And then there's also Torah's Moshe, which is our specific Torah.
So I think it's also, I don't know if y'all are specifically talking about like B'nai Noach, but I mean, just the whole concept of Lecha Dodi, it's so central to, to Shabbat, but it's something that was, it was created in the, what was it, 1600s or so, I think.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it shows how something that, you know, isn't central can become central. But another thing that I was thinking of, so dot, you know, with Dalet Taf, so I think it's somewhere in Deuteronomy, but it talks about like the revelation at Sinai, how Hashem's coming out from, what was it, from Seir and from Mount Paran, but it talks about do you know the reference to Eshdat?
Mm-hmm.
Eshdat Lamo? Yeah.
Yes, Eshdat Lamo.
Yeah. So, what's it referring to? Because like there's a bunch of different interpretations for that.
Yeah, I mean the word dot. I'm not sure how many times it actually gets used in the Torah. That might.
That's the only one, and it's highly debated because it's a Persian loanword.
Yeah, but I mean, the way we use it halachically, right, is under the chuppah. Harayat mekudeshet li kadat Moshe v'Yisrael, right? And so I think the rabbinic understanding and what Maimonides had to, and apparently Rabbi Malot has a video on it.
Oh, cool.
What Maimonides means is, well, okay. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'm prepared to have this discussion, and I don't know if I'm the proper person to have this discussion at all. Why aren't the poskim just like getting involved in this stuff?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what part of the discussion. Like, what part are you asking if you should be having?
Any of it.
Any of what? We shouldn't be having a conversation at all right now. Like, I don't understand.
Why don't I have somebody like Rabbi Breitowitz or Rabbi Malot or Rabbi, you know, any number of rabbis, just at least available to answer questions and explain what Maimonides and Meiri and stuff, as opposed to a putz like me, where like this gets back to the posek and the putz story I keep on telling.
Well, first of all, this is part of why I met with this rabbi specifically to see if he could be engaged on a channel like this and be able to maybe have like a forum where some of these questions could be asked. Another thing you have to take into consideration, which is we are much freer to be like playing around with the sources we look at, because, you know, we're not part of a community. What I mean, we're not part of a community, like there's no like let's say our livelihood isn't in jeopardy. But let's say Ariel starts asking over here questions like, what does Rochev HaKruvim mean, right? The rider of the cherubs. Now, a rabbi that wants to answer that, let's say, honestly, is going to have to start mentioning that, you know, that is actually borrowed from other religions, and we're playing with that type of language. And then you start asking, okay, so 1 second. So is Moses using Babylonian terms? Is he aware of that when he's writing that inside? And then you're opening up a whole Pandora's box to questions. So I definitely understand why rabbis would be hesitant to engage, because it seems like these conversations online, specifically in this corner, very quickly get to like the core of many issues. It's never just like, well, how many hours does one have to wait between like meat and milk? It's usually like, what does the milk mean? How does that relate to Jesus? Was he there? Like immediately you like, the ante is raised. So I understand you. I understand the hesitation, Jacob. I would also say, Yosef, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Yosef, even you, with regards to your engagement, like, do you not feel sometimes that you have to be more hesitant on like what you're writing on these channels sometimes?
Not particular. I don't know. I don't self-censor so much.
No, I don't mean to self-censor. I mean like realizing that someone writes like a question, what does this mean? And you realize that like I can't answer this like with one line. It's gonna have to really be like it's a whole thing. And even when I write to them, that like leads to like 7 other questions. It's really like a 2-hour topic about like what does that mean?
Sure.
Have
So-
you watched any of Rabbi Breidowitz's Q&As?
Who are you talking to right now?
You, Chazi.
No.
You should.
You should.
You should watch at least one of them, but
Sure.
probably more than one. Especially the one where he talks about where people asked him about psychedelics.
Yeah. One second, I
Um,
want to respond to over here. He says, Rabbi says over here that seems rather condescending towards rabbis. So first of all, I'll apologize, but I say this very openly.
Did we
And
lose
we
him?
lost Chazi. It's all Yosef's fault.
Eh,
Yosef, say something.
Yeah.
Can I just say something? Is that a thought?
Yeah, go ahead, Ariel.
I think part of the reason why these conversations are so important is because, like, to be completely honest, why does it make sense for a modern person? Why can't a modern person eat milk and meat? And the thing is, if you don't understand the reason why it was in the past, it's not going to have as much relevance in the in the present unless you just accept it. Like for instance, obviously, there's a reason that it's set. The whole thing, it's like we will do and then we will hear, or accepting it before you hear. But in terms of like the stuff that really, like, if you want it to make sense to people who don't just rely purely on faith, I think it's really important. And in the context of milk and meat, the reason is because it was actually a pagan fertility ritual that was used to try and bring about pregnancy.
Okay, I have to say, it's
Yep.
things like this, and Chazi went down this road as well, which makes the Haredi in me cringe. Because it's like, no, the Torah is the Torah, and like, no, I don't think, yeah.
But you realize, Jacob, Maimonides, and by the way, I'm not necessarily saying I agree that is the origin, or even if it is the origin, if that needs to be stressed. However, first of all, Maimonides himself, unlike Nachmanides, has a nice conversation about korbanot, sacrifices, and clearly connects that to its idol worship origins. And the reason we're using it is as a social tool to allow us to transition. So you then have to deal with all the rest of the Torah dealing with karbanos at that time, ultimately to being like, and then it might not even be relevant anymore.
Okay, look.
But my point, though, is in the same reason that we're not supposed to get tattoos, and that's a commandment from God, there's also the commandment not to eat milk with meat. But the thing is that, it's obvious to people living back then why Hashem's commanding them not to do it, because it's stuff that the other tribes are doing. So you have the social element on top of a religious one, because they were using these rituals to worship other gods. So part of the reason is, even if you're supposedly using these rituals to worship God, God doesn't want you to do it. So I think that part of it is not that it's not relevant, but just because we don't live in a society that does that, it just doesn't seem like it makes any sense, or it doesn't seem like it's relevant.
Okay, from what I'm seeing of Yosef's face, that doesn't sound like it's Yosef.
Well, no, I'm trying to figure out the. Can you restate the point you're trying to make, Ariel?
So basically, it might not seem important for us to emphasize the reason. We don't live in a society where people, make cheeseburgers and think that's going to, make them pregnant. But the thing is that in the society where it would have been obvious, because you see people cooking milk and meat together, because the milk was representative of the milk of motherhood, and the meat was representative of the child, it was a type of sympathetic magic. The thing is, in our society that doesn't do that, it doesn't seem important to emphasize that. Or if you do emphasize it, it just seems like irrelevant because we don't live in that society. But the thing is, it was implicit to them. They would have known that Hashem's commanding them not to do this because it's a pagan ritual. It's avodah zarah.
Sure. And therefore, our attitude toward these mitzvot should be
Oh no, I'm not saying that they should change, but the thing is, if you just explain it as basically, it's not to say that we shouldn't listen to mitzvot that we don't understand, but I do think that it makes a lot of sense to contextualize the ones that have very obvious reasoning.
Well,
Like,
so I wouldn't say this is very obvious. It's actually a really big debate in academia about the origins of milk and meat prohibition, and it's not so simple. It's not the only reason given, and even in the academic world, like there's a debate over what exactly it symbolizes. However, sure, we can always contextualize things historically. I think actually that's a part of Pshat, is to contextualize things historically. But this is Torah that's it's eternal, right? It has to be relevant in every generation and always. It can't just be. So sure, it's one level, and that's one level to understand it at, but it can't be. I don't necessarily think we then need to go to the other. Rambam goes the other, right? He goes, you do these purely out of a sense of obligation. There are no real ta'amim. Yes, there are most of them are ultimately about idolatry, but like it doesn't really matter. You have to do them because God said so, no matter what. But like we do give ta'amim, and we don't really follow the Rambam like strictly exactly. Even he gives ta'amim, so it's like right. It's not, it doesn't really function that way.
I would just add, Yosef, and part of what the rabbi is mentioning over here, that I agree that it's not only the academic reasoning, and we should be more humble, realizing that there could be many levels of depth to these things. So I'm not running to say like it's purely social or it's purely historical. However, and this is a conversation I'll be glad to have with you, Rabbi, more in length. As we move into the future, and specifically in our period today, when these reasons bubble up, and if rabbis show that they're unaware of them or decide to push them under the rug because dealing with them is inconvenient, that damages, I believe, the religion as a whole. And let's say an example would be that once you start breaking down, let's say we're talking about meat and milk, the question is, can a community comfortably feel, can a religious community feel comfortable with people that decide to alternate between 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours, 10 minutes? Is it just a mindset? Because one could then say, yes, I want to keep this concept of meat and milk, but giving the historical context and the issue, then one has to start asking himself, okay, how am I actually doing this? And what are the levels of how I'm doing this, and how am I teaching this to my kid, and what are the words I'm using? God expected you to wait 6 hours. God gave the rabbis authority to tell you to wait 6 hours. Obviously, it gets hairy once you start breaking it down to that level. So again, I think when I was saying not to be condescending to rabbis, I think rabbis need to approach these topics, which are complicated, with transparency and honesty. And I think many times, many do, many don't. Some attempt to, but are not doing it justice. And this goes back to this conversation as well. Are rabbis in closed doors comfortable to say things like, as controversial as we could see the Quran as a divine book? Or is that sign that they're only going to say behind closed doors? Or is that sign that they're going to say it's not true at all? Or am I going to be considered a heretic for saying that?
Okay, I am really tired, and this is a heavy discussion. You guys can continue it. I am going to bed. Chezi is an admin, and
well, I have work as well, so I'm also leaving at this moment. So
okay.
Ariel and Yosef, I'm sorry we can't continue either. And Rabbi, I hope we could talk potentially in the future.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. There's always next time.
Yep.
Okay.
It's 2 a.m. here, but
Shalom.
What did you want to say something, Yosef, before we went?
Oh yeah, Yosef. Sorry.
I don't know, because he just brought up a whole bunch of stuff. I think one thing maybe I would say is you seem to be dealing with this tension in the Rambam. I'm sorry, in the Rambam, and about how mitzvot. evolve or change, but they don't really, right? For the Rambam, that only happens eschatologically. It doesn't happen in time. And even if his ta'amim are kind of like humanity progressing, right? So, and I think you have this, right? Something that keeps coming up in your stuff is zecher basar v'chalav, basically, right? Some sort of remembrance for basar v'chalav when this is no longer important, or zecher whatever. I don't know that we're, obviously zecher l'mikdash is its own category. I don't know that it generalizes to all these other things, and I don't necessarily see that as being a trend coming. Nor do I see that as something happening in time. Like even the Rambam, I don't think it's not happening in time. I don't know. There's a bigger thing to be had here about how mitzvah, kind of pass through Masorah and change over time and minhagim and get zecher. But there's, I don't know. I think you need to dig into this a little bit more. It's also interesting because I feel like a lot of this entire conversation has just been kind of like pushing it back against the Rambam. Or like in all the different parts, Kiddush Shtat here, right? Like his understanding, whatever. Like
B'nai Noach.
I think we're having trouble grappling with the Rambam on this. And in some ways, sometimes he's a dad yachid on these things, right? That's the other thing we have to remember. He's not always we don't always paskin like him on this stuff.
Well,
some things he's a das yachid.
Yeah, part of the problem is he's the only one who actually, like, as a posek, halachically, like, has a lot of these things that, like, this isn't. There's no chelek in Shulchan Aruch Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good night.
Yeah.
I'm ending the broadcast.
But
Good night.
one of the things I did that I mentioned earlier with